The views and opinions expressed on the Nova Society are those of the panelists and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Phoenix Research Institute or any institution which any panel member is associated. Reproduction or dissemination other than for the purpose of education or information without the express written permission of the Phoenix Research Institute or Nova Society Media is strictly prohibited.
I'd like to welcome everyone back to the Nova Society. I'm your host, Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon, and I'm here with my panel, Dr. Scott Gershwer and Dr. Mark Bound.
Every time you say Mark Bound's name, I want to hear that sound. It's like a Frau Blucher.
You can leave that in, Mark.
It's like Frau Blucher.
Yeah, just leave that in, Mark. That'll be funny. Today, our panel will once again be answering questions from our listeners. Welcome, everyone. We'll begin with Cindy, who hails from Charlotte, North Carolina. And Cindy asks, why is the GOP still behind Mark Robinson? I understand it's late in the process, but his comments are unbelievable. And the second part of Cindy's question is, will Mark Robinson's being in the governor's race impact the presidential race in North Carolina?
Can I ask first, do we really need two Carolinas? Can't we just have one Carolina and one Dakotas? So this person, Cindy, is it? Thank you for the question, Cindy. You're from North Carolina and you're asking us. I want to know how this guy got to be the lieutenant governor in the first place. Was he shrink wrapped somewhere and nobody knew anything about him until he started to run for governor? How did he get elected in the first place? That's the question that I have. It's too late, obviously, to change him. The election's in a few weeks, and I think in North Carolina, voting may already have started. You know, obviously, there's no way to change him. So the more salient question, I think, here is he going to affect Trump at all? And I guess, in a way, in a very low margin election, he could, only by having people who would otherwise vote for both of them stay home altogether and just forget about election day that day. That's all. That's the only thought I have on it.
Yeah. And South Carolina used to do the same thing. We used to elect the governor and the lieutenant governor separately. And to be perfectly honest, I mean, we had Bauer for a long time as a lieutenant governor. And I don't think anybody really paid attention to who the lieutenant governor was going to be. It was like, yeah, okay, fine, whoever. It really didn't matter. And North Carolina still had. Now, South Carolina changed that probably about 4 or 5 years ago, where they run together now. But in North Carolina, they still do it the old way. And like I say, if it's anything like it is here in South Carolina back in the past when they did that, people just did not pay attention. Nobody cared. Because let's face it, the lieutenant governor didn't have a lot of power. And it was not unusual to see the governor be one party and the lieutenant governor be the other party. A lot of Carolina voters, and there is a reason why there are two Carolinas, Scott, that there really truly is. I actually saw a video about that. And I agree with you. Why is he the lieutenant governor? Did nobody look into him? And that's probably the only argument I could say was that, yeah, they probably didn't, because nobody cared. The governor is the one that makes all the decisions. He's the one that truly works with the legislature of the state. Will this impact the presidential race going forward in North Carolina? Scott is exactly right. There are people that, may want to vote down a ticket, and because Mark Robinson is so distasteful to them, and let's face it, here's the really interesting thing. This guy's more distasteful than Trump. That's kind of an interesting thing. You have somebody more egregious than Donald Trump, so they may stay home. This also could work in the sense, because North Carolina is very close right now. This also could work in the sense that, and I saw a poll today. People are voting for Kamala Harris, and we always talk about, do you vote for somebody or against somebody? People are coming out to vote for Kamala Harris. 60% are coming to vote for her, 40% to vote against Trump. That was the numbers. If you look at Trump, 72% were coming out to vote for him, and the other 28% were voting against Harris. So that's an interesting dynamic, because we always say it really is an amazing statistic how many people don't actually want the one candidate. They just don't want the other guy. And that may come into play in North Carolina, especially as razor thin as it is in North Carolina. Kamala Harris will win Asheville. Kamala Harris will win Charlotte. Kamala Harris will win all those big cities or those big metropolitan areas relative to in those areas. She's going to win those. There's no doubt about it. But this might play, as Scott said, people just stay home. And it also could play that people are going to come out and vote against this guy that may not have thought to come out and vote, period. And who knows which way that they're going to go. The other interesting thing, which may make that a moot point, is that this guy's getting trounced. He's like 14 points back. I mean, he isn't even close. So maybe those voters that think they have to come out to vote against him may not do so.
Yeah, just to add to that, I had also wondered how on earth this man became lieutenant governor and how on earth he would even run for lieutenant governor. I mean, as lieutenant governor, how he would run for governor. As I understand it, most of his staff has left, and the Republican Governors Association is no longer contributing to his campaign. And what I thought was interesting also is J.D. Vance's statement, about the pornography site or whatever it was. I don't not believe him. The double negative there.
I don't not believe him. I don't not believe him.
Yeah, this weird statement. Yeah. So, but even if he does not win, Mark Robinson, which it looks as though he will not, which I think is a good thing for the people of North Carolina. I don't know if that will stop people from voting for Trump, especially if 72% of respondents to whatever it was, Mark, that you were saying, they are voting for him.
Yeah, but that's nationwide, Brooke. That is not just North Carolina, but it's one of those factors to really keep in mind. It truly is. 40% of the people that are going to vote for Kamala Harris are voting against Trump. That's a very large number. Whereas of the Trump supporters, only 28 are voting against Kamala Harris. I mean, that kind of goes to the favorability numbers. That's why Harris's favorability is higher. North Carolina compared to South Carolina is a very different place. South Carolina is very, very, very red. North Carolina, I'm going to say, is purple, because even though South Carolina has some larger cities, I think the tipping point for South Carolina is the upstate where I live. The largest and fourth largest counties are Greenville, which is largest, and Spartanburg, which is fourth largest, and they're next to each other right up here in the upstate. They are so conservative. They don't go like Charleston. Kamala Harris will win Charleston. Kamala Harris will win Columbia. There's the big cities. They'll win them. But she's going to lose in Greenville. She's going to lose in Spartanburg. And that's kind of what makes South Carolina an interesting place. North Carolina has Greensboro, Raleigh, Charlotte, Asheville. There's more opportunity in North Carolina for a Democrat than there is for a Democrat here in South Carolina. And let's remember, the current governor of North Carolina is a Democrat.
Next one will be too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So thank you, Cindy, for your question. We will see you next time.
So that's all the time we have for today's episode. The Nova Society is a production of the Phoenix Research Institute. We'd like to thank our sponsors for this episode. BH Conflict Resolution Services, a full-service dispute resolution firm offering expert and cost-effective mediation services to couples, groups, and businesses. BHCRS can be reached at www.bhcrs.com. We'd also like to thank our podcast partners, Buzzsprout, who hosts the Nova Society, Audacity, our editing partners, and Podkite, who does all of our analytics. iHeartRadio, where people get their music and podcasts, Apple iTunes, the largest source for music and podcasts on the internet, Spotify, the most popular source for the Nova Society. The Nova Society is available on all of these and other quality platforms. We'd like to thank all of our listeners. Without you, the Nova Society would not be possible. If you have a comment, question, or would like to be a guest on the Nova Society, we can be reached at nova.society.podcast@gmail.com. Always remember, the power of society is knowledge. So for Dr. Scott Gershwer, Dr. Priscilla Hobbs, Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon, and all of us here at the Nova Society, I'm Dr. Mark Bound. Be well, and we hope to see you again next time.